Boston's Union Oyster House is America's oldest continuously operating restaurant. For 200 years, the establishment has served classic New England standards from clam chowder to lobster rolls. Today, it's a popular spot for tourists, but is it a tourist trap? That's what I wanted to find out. It's an exciting day today as I'll be dining at America's oldest continuously operating restaurant, which is Union Oyster House in Boston. But first, I have to get there. So, let's go to Boston. My trip to Boston was a special one, as the whole reason for the visit was about family. I would be staying at my sister and brother-in-law's home, and my parents would be flying in to join. The most exciting part about the trip was that I would be meeting my sister's dog for the first time, Bowie, who will make a brief appearance at the end of the video. As a result, family was my priority, but I still got to see some sights and visit a few restaurants, with Union Oyster House being one of them. After a relaxing train ride, I arrived to my destination right on time. I have made it to Boston, which is a brand new city for me, and subsequently Massachusetts is a brand new state for me. And as a result, I am what you would call a tourist. Because of that, I will be going to the one restaurant that pretty much brings in every tourist coming to Boston, Union Oyster House. The place is famous for their seafood, oysters of course, and history. Now I'm sure there are better spots in Boston for seafood, but the history aspect of Union Oyster House is what's really drawn me in today. While food is the main factor that draws me to restaurants, it's not the only factor, and the history of Union Oyster House is pretty intriguing. I mean, it is 200 years old. That is crazy. Plus, their food does look promising. I mean, you've got to be doing something right to survive 2 centuries. And with that being said, I am pretty hungry. So let's head to Union Oyster House for lunch. Union Oyster House is located in downtown Boston, right along the famous Freedom Trail. The eatery was established in 1826, but at the time it was known as Atwood and Bacon Oyster House. Over the years, the restaurant has remained a fixture in Boston's dining scene and has subsequently attracted a number of notable patrons like the statesman Daniel Webster. It was purported that Webster seldom had less than 6 plates of oysters, which he enjoyed with a tumbler of brandy. President John F. Kennedy was also a consistent visitor to the Oyster House, and subsequently the restaurant dedicated a booth to his memory. Without question, I was excited to dine at such a historical and noteworthy establishment, so I arrived to the restaurant at 11:30 for my reservation. So I just got seated. This is a really cool looking restaurant. There's just stuff to look at everywhere. Union Oyster House is by no means a small restaurant. In fact, I didn't even get to see every area of the establishment, as the business occupies 3 floors. I'm particularly upset that I forgot to check out the Kennedy table, but what I did see was pretty interesting. All over the restaurant, the eateries as well as Boston's expansive history was on full display. Overall, I liked the feel of the place. Soon enough, however, I began to explore the menu. Union Oyster House pretty much serves all the classic New England staples, from lobster rolls to clam chowder. The restaurant even serves scrod, which I didn't have at Union Oyster House, but I later tried it for the first time at the Parker House. I must say, that dish tasted even worse than its name sounds. Although it wasn't terrible, but thankfully I made much better food choices at Union Oyster House. Next, I checked out the beverage offerings. There were some nice sounding cocktails, but I felt like getting a beer, and considering that I was in Boston, I had to go with a Sam Adams. I got the Sam Adams Colonial Ale, which is an exclusive beer that's only served at Union Oyster House. I thought that it was pretty decent. It had a good body to it and a bit of nuttiness. Sam Adams is of course named after Samuel Adams, one of the founding fathers, and an individual that's often described as a brewer. However, evidence suggests that Adams was actually a maltster, which meant that he produced the malt necessary for brewing beer. Whatever the case, I was satisfied with my drink.
First up in terms of food was the cornbread, which everyone receives. The bread on its own was very nice. It was cakey and had a light sweetness. The cornbread also came with butter, but it really didn't need it. Plus, putting butter on cornbread can be such a pain due to the crumbly nature of the bread. Next, I turned my attention to one of the appetizers I received, which was a cup of clam chowder. Yep, I was going to order every stereotypical Boston dish possible. Now that was a solid clam chowder. The flavor was certainly there. First off, the soup had a nice, thick body to it and was densely packed with clams, potatoes, and onions. I also liked the bit of smokiness from the pork. On its own, that was an enjoyable dish, but I also took advantage of the oyster crackers on the table, which lent some nice textural variety to the soup. Overall, that clam chowder delivered. Funny enough, the last time I had clam chowder was in Vietnam of all places. The example I had at Union Oyster House was much better. Next up was my plate of a half dozen oysters. My server said there were 2 varieties on the dish, which I can't recall specifically what they were, but variety is something I always appreciate. After squeezing the lemon over the oysters, I dove right in. Those were textbook oysters indeed. They had that wonderful brininess and richness that I love. My only criticism, however, is not about the oysters, which I really enjoyed, but the restaurant's lack of a selection when it comes to offering oysters on the menu. When a place is called Union Oyster House, I figured there would be a good variety of shellfish on offer. In comparison, the iconic Grand Central Oyster Bar in New York City offers a far more expansive list of oysters. Nevertheless, I still enjoyed what the Union Oyster House provided, and then it was on to the main course.
So far, solid start to the lunch. Good cornbread, good beer, solid clam chowder, and good oysters. I'm happy.
Soon enough, I was presented with the chilled lobster roll, which came with fries, coleslaw, and a dill pickle. That was a good-looking roll indeed, so I eagerly dove right in. Now that was a satisfying lobster roll. First off, it was packed pretty nicely with lobster meat, which was tender and flavorful. The bread was pleasant as well, as it was fresh and nicely toasted. Now, the restaurant also serves a hot lobster roll, but I went with the chilled version as it's more traditional for the area. My roll also had a market price, which for that day set me back about $45, but I thought it was worth it. Besides the lobster, I also enjoyed the other components on the plate. Those fries were especially nice, even though there weren't many of them, but I particularly enjoyed how they were seasoned. The coleslaw was also on point, and I took a bite of the pickle, but soon enough, it was time for dessert.
So that was a tasty lobster roll. So far, that was my favorite dish, and now on to dessert.
Union Oyster House offers a few different desserts, but there was really only one that I was considering that day, the Boston cream pie, of course. It was certainly an attractive looking slice of cake, and I was excited to give it a go. That was an enjoyable dessert. The dish was fresh, moist, and had a strong punch of chocolate. It was definitely on the sweeter side, but the cream helped cut through that, and I would imagine coffee pairing perfectly with the cake. To sum it up, that was a fine dish to conclude my meal at Union Oyster House.
So that was a solid dessert. I'm pretty stuffed. I'm satisfied.
Finally, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $106.09, but with my tip, I spent a bit over $126.
So I just finished lunch and walked over to this waterfront park. That was a good meal. For the most part, it kind of went how I expected it would. I got a good dose of history and some solid food. Like I said earlier, I'm sure there are other spots in Boston that have better seafood, but none of those places have quite the same level of history that the Union Oyster House does. In a way, the Union Oyster House kind of reminds me of Keen's Steakhouse in New York City. Both establishments are very old and historic, and inside they're each kind of like a museum in that there's so much stuff to look at. I'm kind of bummed that I forgot to go see the JFK booth, but I still have time here in Boston. I may go back. Now, even though the history of the Union Oyster House was what really attracted me to the place, I still really enjoyed all the food I had. I pretty much got the stereotypical Boston special. I mean, I got the clam chowder, the Sam Adams, the lobster roll, and Boston cream pie. I mean, I checked all the boxes with that one lunch. And overall, I was pretty happy with all my culinary choices, although that was a large menu and there were a number of other dishes on there that I would have loved to have tried. Overall, I was pretty happy with my experience at the Union Oyster House. Do I think it's a tourist trap? No, I do not. I feel like some people just have such a negative connotation with spots that attract a large number of tourists. All of a sudden, they're just too cool for these restaurants. I am not a fan of that attitude. It just seems kind of snobby to me. Overall, no one can deny the historical importance the Union Oyster House has to Boston and America in general. To sum it up, I had some fine food at the Union Oyster House, and I loved being immersed in all that history. I definitely hope to return one day to the Union Oyster House.
To conclude my afternoon in Boston, I did some more exploring and then had an enjoyable shot of espresso. Finally, I met up with my sister and journeyed to her home, where I made a new best friend.
Bowie, hi. Hi, Bowie.